They laughed when she stepped off the truck. A silent girl with a rifle she couldn't even carry properly. Three days later, she made a shot that should have been impossible. 1 mile through a blizzard, cold barrel, first trigger pull. The target dropped before the sound reached them, and in that frozen silence, every man who mocked her realized they'd made a terrible mistake. This is the story of Iris Vale, the sniper who never needed to speak. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The supply truck coughed black exhaust into the mountain air, engine rattling like loose teeth in a skull. When it finally shuddered to a stop outside Forward Base Rookfall, the driver didn't even cut the ignition, just leaned out, spat into the snow, and jerked his thumb toward the back. "Your new asset," he shouted over the wind. "Good luck with that one." Captain Nolan Pierce stood in the compound yard, arms crossed, watching 3 soldiers unload ammunition crates. The cold bit through his tactical jacket. February in the Korvac range was unforgiving. Wind that could strip skin, temperatures that turned spit to ice before it hit the ground. He wasn't expecting much. Replacements never lasted long up here. The back gate dropped with a metallic clang. A figure emerged from the shadows of the truck bed. Small. Compact frame. Maybe 5'4" at most. Standard issue winter gear that looked 2 sizes too big. A rifle case strapped across her back. Bolt action, judging by the length. Nearly as tall as she was. Pierce felt his jaw tighten. "You've got to be kidding me." The girl, woman, technically, though she looked barely out of basic, stepped down carefully. Boots hit the frozen ground without sound. She adjusted the rifle case, eyes sweeping the base perimeter with methodical precision. Not nervous, not hesitant, just observing. Sergeant Cole Mercer appeared beside Pierce, squinting through the blowing snow. "That's our marksman?" "Apparently." Pierce pulled the transfer orders from his pocket, scanned them again. Specialist Iris Vale. Marksmanship qualification. Expert. Additional training, redacted. Medical notes, redacted. Previous assignments, redacted. Redacted? Mercer's eyebrows went up. The hell does that mean? "It means someone doesn't want us asking questions." Pierce folded the paper, shoved it back in his pocket. "Or it means she's connected and they needed somewhere to dump her." Iris approached with even steps, snow crunching softly. She stopped exactly 6 feet away, proper military distance, and set down her duffel. Then she stood at attention, waiting. Pierce studied her. Dark hair pulled back tight, eyes that didn't quite meet his but didn't avoid them either, focused somewhere past his left shoulder. Face expressionless. "Specialist Vale," he said. "Welcome to Rookfall. I'm Captain Pierce. This is Sergeant Mercer, our lead spotter." She nodded once. Pierce waited. She didn't speak. "At ease," he said. She shifted her stance slightly. Still didn't talk. "You going to introduce yourself?" Mercer asked, not unkindly. Iris reached into her jacket, pulled out a small weatherproof notebook and pen. Flipped it open. Wrote quickly in neat, precise handwriting. "Cannot speak. Vocal injury. Writing preferred." She turned the notebook toward them. Pierce felt something cold settle in his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. "You're mute," he said flatly. She wrote again. "Yes? And they sent you here?" Pierce looked at the transfer orders once more, as if reading them harder would make them make sense. "To a forward combat outpost, where communication can mean the difference between life and death. I communicate fine, just differently." Jesus Christ, Pierce rubbed his face. Behind him, he could hear the other soldiers gathering. Word traveled fast in a base this small. Whispers, low laughter. "You understand what we do here. This isn't a support base. We run active reconnaissance into hostile territory, long-range patrols, sniper overwatch for advancing units. Radio discipline is critical. Verbal confirmation can save lives." Iris wrote steadily, hand moving without hesitation. "I'm qualified for the position. My records speak for themselves." "Your records are mostly blank," Pierce snapped. "What I've got is a specialist who can't call out contacts, can't relay intel over comms, and can't—" "Cap!" Mercer's voice cut through quietly. "She's here. Orders are orders. Pierce knew Mercer was right. Didn't make it easier to swallow. Fine. He pointed toward the main barracks. Mercer, get her processed. Bunk assignment, equipment check, the usual. She starts inventory rotation tomorrow. Mercer nodded. Copy that. Pierce turned away, already feeling the headache building behind his eyes. 16 soldiers at this base, 15 who could handle themselves in the mountains, and now one who couldn't even shout a warning. Hey, Cap? One of the privates, Reynolds, a kid from Georgia with more attitude than sense, called out. She gonna communicate with hand signals? Like charades? Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Pierce didn't dignify it with a response. Just walked toward the command building, snow already filling his boot prints behind him. The barracks smelled like gun oil, coffee, and unwashed men living too close together for too long. Iris followed Mercer inside, keeping her duffel on one shoulder, rifle case in hand. 8 bunks lined each wall, lockers at the foot of each. A wood stove in the center pumped heat that barely reached the corners. Most of the soldiers were out, training rotation or patrol, but 3 remained. They watched her enter with open curiosity. You're bunking here? One of them asked. Corporal Chen, according to the name tape. Mid-30s, scarred knuckles, eyes that had seen things. Thought you'd get separate quarters, Mercer shook his head. Not enough rooms. She's with general population. She know that means co-ed showers? Another soldier asked. Private Voss, tall and angular, German accent. No special accommodations out here. Iris set down her gear on the empty bunk near the back, wrote in her notebook without looking up. Not a problem. I've worked with men before. She held it up. Voss read it, grunted. Fair enough. Just don't expect privacy. Chen leaned forward, elbows on knees. So you really can't talk? At all? Iris shook her head. Injury? She hesitated, then wrote, training accident, long time ago. Damn, Chen sat back. That's rough. You sign language? Some, but writing is clearer. How's that going to work in the field? The third soldier asked. Private Cade, young, nervous energy. You can't exactly pass notes during a firefight. Iris wrote quickly. I won't be in firefights. I'll be at distance, doing my job. Mercer cleared his throat. She's a marksman, or markswoman, sniper, essentially. Long-range precision work. Voss laughed. Not cruel, just disbelieving. No offense, but you're what? 5'4"? You look like you'd blow away in a strong wind. And that rifle, he nodded at her case, has to weigh 40 pounds loaded. Iris didn't write anything, just opened the case with practiced efficiency. Inside sat a custom bolt-action rifle, modular chassis system, adjustable stock, free-floating barrel, high magnification scope with offset backup irons, bipod attachment, suppressor threaded on the end, .338 Lapua Magnum if Pierce had to guess, long-range caliber, serious hardware. The soldiers went quiet. That's a nice piece, Chen admitted. Iris ran her hand along the barrel, not possessive, more like checking on an old friend. Then she pulled out cleaning supplies, disassembly tools, logbook. Everything organized, everything deliberate. How long you been shooting? Kate asked. Iris wrote, since I was 7. 7? Voss blinked. Like target practice with your dad? Advanced marksmanship program. Military sponsored. What kind of military program trains 7-year-olds? Chen asked slowly. Iris paused, pen hovering over paper. Then she wrote 2 words and closed the notebook. Specialized training. She didn't elaborate. Mercer watched her carefully. There was something in the way she moved. Economical, efficient, no wasted motion, like someone who'd been drilled until instinct replaced thought. All right, he said finally. Get settled. Chow's at 1800 hours. Formation briefing at 1900. Cold weather sustainment training at 0600 tomorrow. Questions? Iris shook her head. Good. Mercer headed for the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, Vale, Pierce is a hard ass, but he's fair. You prove yourself, he'll come around. Iris wrote nothing, just nodded once. After Mercer left, the barracks settled into uneasy quiet. Chen went back to cleaning his rifle. Voss pulled out a tablet, started watching something with earbuds in. Cade kept glancing at Iris like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. She unpacked methodically. Clothing folded military style, boots lined up perfectly. Personal items minimal, a few photographs she didn't display, a worn paperback novel, a second notebook she kept locked. When she pulled out a small case of earplugs and a sleep mask, Voss snorted. "Princess can't handle snoring?" Iris wrote, "Light sleeper, helps me rest better." "Whatever you say." She finished unpacking in silence, then sat on her bunk, opened her rifle logbook, and began recording data. Barrel round count, last cleaning date, environmental exposure. Every detail logged with meticulous care. Outside, the wind picked up. The barracks walls creaked. Somewhere in the compound, someone was running a generator. Cade finally broke. "Can I ask you something?" Iris looked up, nodded. "Why here? Why this posting? You've got specialized training, custom gear, redacted records. You could be anywhere. Why volunteer for a frozen hellhole like Rookfall?" Iris considered the question. Then she wrote carefully, "Because no one else wanted it." She showed him the page. Cade frowned. "That's it? You took the job nobody wanted?" Iris wrote again. "Someone has to." Then she closed the logbook, set it aside, and pulled out the paperback, some thriller about submarine warfare, and started reading. Conversation over. What? Dinner was served in the mess hall, a prefab structure that rattled in the wind like a tin can. Stew that was more salt than meat. Bread hard enough to double as a weapon. Coffee so strong it could strip paint. Iris sat alone at the end of a table, eating slowly, methodically. She'd brought her notebook but didn't open it, just observed. The soldiers clustered in their usual groups. Mercer with the senior NCOs discussing patrol routes. Reynolds and his crew talking loudly about some bar fight back home. A few others playing cards in the corner. Everyone kept glancing at her. "Think she can actually shoot?" Reynolds said. Not quite loud enough to be directly confrontational, but loud enough to carry. "Who cares?" one of his friends replied. "She's going to be stuck on inventory duty anyway." Waste of a bunk. Waste of a rifle. Iris kept eating, face neutral. If she heard them, she didn't show it. Mercer noticed, though. He stood, walked over to Reynolds' table. "You got something to say, Private?" Reynolds straightened. "No, Sergeant." "Good. Because if I hear any of you giving Vale shit, we're going to have a problem. Clear?" "Clear, Sergeant." Mercer returned to his seat. Across the room, Iris looked up briefly, met his eyes. Nodded once. Acknowledgement, not gratitude. He nodded back. After dinner, Pierce held the formation briefing in the operations room, maps on the walls, radio equipment humming, the temperature barely above freezing despite the space heater in the corner. All 16 soldiers packed in, standing room only. Pierce stood at the front, arms crossed. "Listen up. Command's confirmed increased hostile movement in the northern valleys. We're expecting contact within the next 72 hours. Patrol schedules are doubling. No one goes outside the wire without a partner. Radio checks every 30 minutes. If you see anything, tracks, smoke, movement, you report it immediately." He scanned the room. "This is not a drill. The enemy knows we're here and they're testing our perimeter. Stay sharp, stay ready." His eyes landed on Iris, standing at the back. "Vale, you're on armory duty until further notice. Inventory, maintenance, cleaning. Mercer will walk you through procedures tomorrow." Iris wrote in her notebook. "Understood." She held it up. Reynolds muttered something under his breath. A few soldiers smirked. Pierce's expression didn't change. "Something funny, Reynolds?" "No, sir." "Good. Dismissed." The soldiers filed out. Iris was the last to leave, pausing at the doorway when Pierce called her name. "Vale." She turned. He studied her for a long moment. "I don't know what strings were pulled to get you here, and frankly, I don't care. But understand this. Lives depend on every person in this unit. If you can't pull your weight, you're a liability. I won't tolerate liabilities." Iris wrote, "I won't be a liability. We'll see." She left without another word. What? The armory was a reinforced container unit, temperature-controlled, lined with weapon racks and ammunition crates. Mercer showed her the system, everything cataloged, everything accounted for. Missing equipment meant investigations. Damaged equipment meant reports. "It's tedious," Mercer admitted, "but critical. We can't afford supply failures out here." Iris nodded, already scanning the racks. Her eyes moved with purpose. Not random browsing, but systematic evaluation. She stopped at one of the M4 carbines, pulled it down, checked the chamber, examined the bolt carrier group, frowned, wrote, "This extractor is worn. Needs replacement before next use." Mercer took the rifle, inspected it. "Damn. You're right. Good catch." She moved to the next weapon, then the next. Within 20 minutes, she'd flagged 3 rifles with maintenance issues, problems that weren't obvious, things you'd only notice if you knew exactly what to look for. Mercer watched her work, increasingly impressed despite himself. "You've done this before," he said. Iris wrote, "Part of my training, equipment maintenance, field repair, armory management." "What else did they teach you?" She paused, pen hovering, then wrote, "Everything necessary," vague again, deliberate. Mercer didn't push. "Well, whatever they taught you, it's good work. Keep this up and Pierce will come around faster than you think." Iris wrote nothing, just returned to the inventory, checking serial numbers against the logbook with mechanical precision. That night, after lights out, the barracks settled into uneasy sleep. Snoring from Voss, Chen grinding his teeth, Cade tossing and turning. Iris lay perfectly still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She didn't need the sleep mask yet, didn't need the earplugs. She was listening. Wind patterns against the building, the rhythm of breathing around her, footsteps outside, guard rotation, predictable intervals, the distant hum of generators, mapping everything, learning the environment. At 0200 hours, she rose silently, dressed in layers, pulled on boots without lacing them fully, grabbed her rifle case and slipped outside. The guard on duty, Private Marsh, looked up, surprised. "Vale? The hell are you doing out here?" Iris wrote quickly. "Couldn't sleep. Going to check the range." "Range is closed. Just looking. Won't fire." Marsh hesitated, then shrugged. "Your funeral if you freeze. Stay inside the perimeter." She nodded, walked toward the training area. The shooting range was a cleared strip of land with target berms at various distances. 50 meters, 100, 300, 500. Beyond that, natural terrain, boulders, ridgelines, valleys, disappearing into darkness. Iris set down her rifle case but didn't open it. Instead, she stood at the firing line, completely still, watching. The wind came in cycles, strong gusts from the northwest, brief lulls, then crosswinds from the valley. Snow moved in patterns, eddies around rocks, smooth flows over open ground, turbulent swirls near obstacles. She observed for 30 minutes. Didn't move, didn't shiver despite the cold biting through her jacket, just learned. When she finally returned to the barracks, Mercer was awake, sitting on his bunk, cleaning his sidearm. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. Iris wrote, "Adjusting to the environment. By standing outside in sub-zero temps? By understanding the wind?" Mercer studied her. "You're serious," she nodded. "Most snipers use weather stations, Kestrel devices, ballistic computers." Iris wrote, "Tools fail. Wind doesn't lie." "And you think you can read it better than instruments?" "I know I can." She didn't write it with arrogance, just certainty. Mercer set down his pistol. "How long have you been shooting, really?" Iris hesitated, then wrote, 17 years. "You're what, 24? 25. Started when I was 7. "Jesus." Mercer shook his head. "That's not training. That's something else." Iris wrote nothing, climbed back into her bunk, pulled the blanket up, closed her eyes. Conversation over. But Mercer lay awake for a long time after that, thinking about a girl who'd been shooting since childhood, who read wind like language, who moved through the world with the deliberate precision of someone who'd been forged for a single purpose. He didn't know what that purpose was yet, but he was starting to suspect it wasn't inventory duty. The next 3 days followed the same pattern. Iris worked the armory during the day, cataloging equipment, performing maintenance, never complaining. She ate alone, kept to herself, responded to questions with short written answers and nothing more. The soldiers mostly ignored her. A few tried making conversation. Chen asked about her training. Voss invited her to play cards. But she remained distant, polite but impenetrable. Pierce watched from a distance, waiting for her to fail at something. She didn't. Every task completed perfectly, every rifle cleaned to textbook standards, every report filed without errors. It was almost mechanical. On the fourth day, the weather broke long enough for field training. Pierce gathered the unit at the range. Live fire exercises, standard qualification course, then advanced scenarios. Everyone participates. He looked directly at Iris. That includes you, Vale. Let's see if those redacted records are worth anything. Iris wrote, "Understood." The soldiers lined up at the firing positions. M4 carbines, standard infantry engagement. Targets at 50, 100, 200 meters. Timed drills. Stress positions. Reload under pressure. Reynolds went first. Decent scores. A few misses at distance, but solid overall. Chen followed. Better accuracy, smooth transitions. Voss nailed every target, cocky grin on his face. Then Iris stepped up. She'd borrowed a standard M4, not her custom rifle, just basic infantry hardware. Checked the chamber, press-checked the magazine, shouldered it with familiar ease. Pierce started the timer. "Engage when ready." Iris fired. Pop, pop, pop. Controlled pairs. 50-meter targets dropped instantly. She transitioned. 100 meters, same rhythm, same precision. 200 meters. Wind starting to pick up. Harder shots. Didn't matter. Every round found its mark. When the timer stopped, Pierce checked the targets through binoculars. Perfect score. Not a single miss. The soldiers went quiet. "Lucky," Reynolds muttered. "Run it again," Pierce said. Iris reloaded, ran the course again. Perfect score. Again. Third run. Same result. Voss let out a low whistle. "Okay, that's not luck." Pierce's jaw tightened. "Mercer, set up the long-range course." Mercer nodded, jogged toward the equipment shed. 10 minutes later, steel targets appeared downrange. 500 meters, 700, 1,000. "Switch to your rifle," Pierce told Iris. "Let's see what you've got." Iris returned to the firing line, this time with her custom point, 338 Lapua Magnum. She assembled it quickly. Stock extended, bipod deployed, scope dialed. She settled into prone position, adjusted the bipod legs, chambered around. Then she just waited, watching the wind, reading the valley, breathing slowly. "Whenever you're ready," Pierce called. She didn't rush. 30 seconds passed. A minute. The wind shifted, brief lull between gusts. Iris fired. At 700 meters, the steel target rang clear across the valley. No adjustment. First shot. She cycled the bolt, ejected the casing, chambered the next round, waited again. Wind pattern repeating, same lull approaching. Second shot, 1,000 meters, target impact. Mercer, spotting through binoculars, didn't blink. Both hits, center mass. Pierce stared down range, expression unreadable. Iris stood, cleared her rifle, collected her casings. Wrote in her notebook, "Qualification complete?" "You've qualified," Pierce said slowly. "But qualification and combat are different things." "I understand." "Do you?" He stepped closer. "Out here, it's not about perfect conditions and static targets. It's chaos. Moving enemies, bad intel, equipment failure. You ever taken a shot when lives depended on it?" Iris met his eyes for the first time since arriving. Wrote one word, "Yes." Pierce wanted to push further, but something in her expression stopped him. Not defiance, not pride, just certainty. "Dismissed," he said finally. The soldiers dispersed, muttering among themselves. Iris packed her rifle, methodical as ever, and headed back to the armory. Mercer fell into step beside her. "That was impressive," he said quietly. She wrote, "It's my job. Most people can't shoot like that. Hell, most trained snipers can't shoot like that." "I'm not most people. I'm starting to see that." Mercer paused. "You ever going to tell us where you really trained?" Iris stopped walking, looked at him directly. Wrote carefully, "Would it change anything if you knew?" Mercer thought about it. "Probably not. Then it doesn't matter." She continued toward the armory. Mercer watched her go, a strange feeling settling in his gut. Not suspicion exactly, more like recognition. He'd seen operators before, special forces, black ops types who moved through the world differently than regular soldiers. People who'd been refined down to a single purpose, polished until nothing unnecessary remained. Iris Vale had that same quality, and that worried him more than he wanted to admit. That night, intelligence came through. Pierce gathered the senior staff in the operations room. Mercer, Chen, Voss, and Corporal Tate, the unit's communications specialist. A grainy satellite photo displayed on the monitor. Mountain terrain, thick forest, a small compound barely visible through the trees. Target acquired, Pierce said. High-value enemy operative. Command wants confirmation of elimination within 48 hours. What's the range? Mercer asked. 1,800 meters. Give or take. Voss let out a breath. That's over a mile. In perfect conditions, maybe doable, Chen added. But out here, wind, cold air density, elevation changes, it's a low probability shot, Pierce agreed. But command wants it done. Question is, who takes it? Silence. 1,800 meters was beyond standard engagement range. Possible, technically, but the variables were insane. Wind alone could push a round off target by meters. Temperature affected ballistics. Air density changed bullet trajectory. It wasn't just shooting, it was mathematics, meteorology, and luck all at once. I can try, Voss said slowly, but I'm not confident past 1,200. Same, Chen admitted. Mercer said nothing, just stared at the satellite photo, mind working. Pierce noticed. What are you thinking? We've got someone on base who might be able to make that shot. Who? Vale. The room went quiet. The mute girl? Tate said. She's been here less than a week. And she just ran perfect scores on the range, Mercer countered. 700, 1,000 meters, first shot hits, calm as glass. That was controlled environment, Voss argued. This is combat. Her records are redacted for a reason, Mercer pressed. Advanced training, specialized program. Custom rifle built for extreme range. She's not here by accident. Pierce considered it. You really think she can make an 1,800-meter shot? I think if anyone on this base can, it's her. Pierce studied the map. Calculated risk versus potential failure. Command wanted results. He didn't have many options. Bring her in, he said finally. Let's see what she says. Checked. Iris was in the barracks reading her paperback when Mercer found her. Vale. Command wants to talk to you. She set down the book, pulled on her jacket, followed him outside. The operations room felt colder than usual, all eyes on her when she entered. Pierce gestured to the monitor. We've got a mission, long-range elimination, targets here. He tapped the screen. At approximately 1,800 meters. Terrain's rough. Wind's unpredictable. No margin for error. He looked at her directly. Mercer seems to think you can make this shot. I'm skeptical, but I'm willing to hear you out. Iris studied the satellite image, zoomed in, examined the terrain features, ridgelines, valley patterns. Her eyes moved with systematic precision. Then she pulled out her notebook, wrote for a long moment. When she finished, she turned it toward Pierce. I need detailed topographic map, current and forecasted weather data, exact target coordinates, ballistic calculator, and 12 hours to study wind patterns. If I can scout the shooting position beforehand, probability of success increases significantly. Pierce read it twice. That's a lot of requirements. It's a difficult shot. Can you make it? Iris held his gaze, wrote carefully. If conditions are within acceptable parameters, yes. And if they're not, then I won't take the shot. I don't gamble with bullets. Mercer leaned forward. She's saying she'll only fire if she's certain. That's exactly what we need. Voss crossed his arms. And if she misses? If the target goes to ground and we lose our window? Iris wrote, I don't miss. It wasn't bravado, wasn't arrogance, just fact. Pierce made his decision. All right, you've got your 12 hours. Mercer, you're her spotter. Get her everything she needs. Mission brief at 0600. We move at 0700. Iris nodded once. Don't make me regret this, Pierce added. She wrote one final line. You won't. Then she left to begin her preparations, mind already calculating distances, wind speeds, temperature gradients. Behind her, the room erupted in quiet argument, Voss questioning the decision, Chen analyzing risks, Tate running communication protocols. But Mercer stayed silent, watching through the window as Iris walked toward the range again. She moved with purpose. No hesitation, no fear, like someone who'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. And in the frozen darkness of forward base Rookfall, With enemy forces moving in the mountains and a shot that shouldn't be possible waiting on the horizon, Iris Vale finally had a chance to prove she wasn't a mistake. She was a weapon. And weapons didn't need to speak. They just needed to hit their mark. The wind data came in fragments, radio reports from forward positions, satellite meteorology updates, handheld kestrel readings from the guard towers. Iris spread them across the table in the operations room, cross-referencing timestamps, building a picture of how air moved through the valley. Mercer sat across from her, watching. Most snipers just check the weather station and call it good. She wrote without looking up. Most snipers aren't shooting a mile through mountain terrain. Fair point. He leaned back. What are you looking for exactly? Patterns. Wind doesn't move randomly. It follows topography. Valleys create channels. Ridgelines create turbulence. Temperature inversions change everything. Mercer studied the notes she'd made, detailed sketches of the valley profile, arrows indicating wind direction at different elevations, calculations he didn't fully understand. "You've done this before," he said. Not a question. Iris paused, pen hovering over paper, then wrote, "Yes." "How many times?" She didn't answer immediately, just stared at the topographic map, fingers tracing the elevation lines. Finally, enough to know what works. Vague again, always vague. Mercer decided not to push. "All right, what else do you need?" "Time at the actual firing position. I need to feel the wind there, not just read about it." "That's risky. We'd have to move you into position tonight, keep you there until dawn. Cold exposure, potential enemy patrols." "I've been colder." Something in the way she wrote it, flat, matter-of-fact, made Mercer wonder exactly what kind of training she'd endured. "I'll clear it with Pierce," he said. She nodded, already returning to her calculations. They moved out at 2100 hours. 4-person team, Iris, Mercer, Chen, and Private Marsh. Light patrol load. Suppressed weapons. Radio silence unless absolutely necessary. The temperature had dropped to -15°C. Wind chill made it feel worse. Snow crunched under boots despite their careful steps. Iris carried her rifle in a drag bag, scope caps on, muzzle down. She moved differently than the others, slower, more deliberate. Not from inexperience, but from constant observation. Her head turned slightly at every sound, every shift in wind direction. Marsh kept glancing back at her, nervous. "She gonna be able to keep up?" "She's fine," Mercer said quietly. "Focus forward." They climbed for 90 minutes, following a ridgeline that overlooked the target valley. No trails, no paths, just broken terrain and ice-slicked rocks. Iris never complained, never asked for breaks, just climbed. When they finally reached the overwatch position, a rocky outcrop with natural cover and clear sightlines, Mercer called a halt. "This is it. Target zone is northeast, roughly 1,800 meters." Iris dropped her drag bag, pulled out night vision binoculars, and glassed the valley. Methodical sweep, left to right. Cataloging terrain features. The compound was barely visible. Small structures, maybe a guard post, nestled against the mountainside. Thermal signatures suggested occupied buildings. She studied it for 5 minutes without moving. Then she set down the binoculars and just stood there. Eyes closed, face tilted slightly into the wind. "What's she doing?" Marsh whispered. "Reading," Mercer said. "Reading what?" "Everything." Iris stood motionless for another 10 minutes. The wind came in waves, strong gusts that rattled equipment, brief lulls where snow hung suspended, crosswinds that swirled unpredictably. She tracked it all, felt the pressure changes, noted the timing. Then she opened her eyes, pulled out her notebook, and began writing. Long strings of numbers, wind speed estimates, directional changes, temperature gradients, building a model in her head. When she finished, she showed Mercer. Wind pattern repeats every 8 to 12 minutes. Strong northwest gusts followed by 15 to 20-second lull. Crosswind from valley creates 3 to 5 miles per hour lateral push during transition. Optimal firing window exists, but it's narrow. Mercer read it twice. "You got all that from standing there?" She nodded. "How?" "Practice." Chen moved up beside them, checking his watch. We've got 6 hours until sunrise. You planning to stay here the whole time? Iris wrote, yes. Need to confirm pattern holds through night. You'll freeze. I'll manage. Mercer made the call. All right, we rotate watch, 2 hours each. Chen, you're first. Marsh, second. I'll take third. Valia, you just focus on your wind reading. They settled into position. Chen posted security. Marsh tried to get comfortable against a boulder. Mercer set up the spotting scope. Iris sat cross-legged on the frozen ground, rifle case beside her, notebook in her lap. Every 10 minutes, she recorded observations. Wind speed, direction, duration of lulls. Hour after hour, no deviation. Marsh watched her during his shift, incredulous. She hasn't moved in 40 minutes. Doesn't she feel the cold? She feels it, Mercer said quietly. She just doesn't care. That's not normal. No, it's not. At 0300 hours, the wind pattern shifted. Gusts became irregular. The lulls shortened. Iris frowned, writing quickly. Then she pulled out a small thermometer, checked the temperature, compared it to earlier readings. Wrote, temperature inversion forming. Changes convection pattern. Wind windows will be less predictable after 0600. Mercer leaned over. Meaning if we're going to take this shot, it needs to be soon after sunrise, before the valley warms up. How soon? 0630 to 0700 window. After that, probability drops significantly. Mercer keyed his radio, breaking silence. Overwatch to base. We have new timing parameters. Shot window is 0630 to 0700. Confirm? Static. Then Pierce's voice. Confirmed. Target is still in location. You're clear to engage during that window. Copy. Iris began prepping her rifle. Removed it from the drag bag with careful precision. Checked the chamber. Inspected the scope. Ran her hand along the barrel, feeling for any ice buildup. Everything moved like ritual, like prayer without words. Chen watched, fascinated despite himself. You always this methodical? She wrote, methodical keeps you alive. What if you don't have time to be methodical? What if it's fast-moving target, quick decision? Then you rely on training, but whenever possible, you prepare. She assembled the bipod, locked it into position, began ranging the target area with her scope, writing down distances to various reference points, building a mental map. Mercer sat up beside her with the spotting scope. I'll call wind, confirm target, watch for impact. You just focus on the shot. Iris shook her head. Wrote, I call my own wind. You confirm target and watch for impact only. That's not standard procedure. Spotter always calls wind. I'm not standard. Mercer wanted to argue, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she moved, absolutely certain, no hesitation. Maybe it was those perfect shots on the range. Or maybe it was the growing suspicion that whoever trained her knew exactly what they were doing. All right, he said. Your call. Dawn came slowly, gray light bleeding into the eastern sky. Temperature dropped another few degrees, always coldest just before sunrise. Iris lay prone now, cheek pressed against the stalk, breathing slow and controlled. 6-second cycles. In through the nose, out through barely parted lips. Her finger rested along the trigger guard. Not on the trigger yet. Just ready, waiting. The valley below remained dark, no movement, no thermal signatures changing. Then, at 0627 hours, a door opened at the compound. Single figure emerged. Male, medium build, moving toward what looked like a latrine structure. Mercer glassed him through the spotting scope. Possible target, confirming identity. He checked the surveillance photo command had provided. Compared features. That's him. Target confirmed. Iris didn't move yet, just watched through her scope. The figure was exposed, moving slowly, vulnerable. Perfect shot. Except the wind was wrong. Strong gust from the northwest. 30 mph sustained. A bullet fired now would miss by meters. She waited. The target reached the latrine, went inside, door closed. Marsh cursed under his breath. We just lost our shot. Iris wrote quickly. He'll come back out. Pattern suggests 2 to 3 minutes. You can't know that. Latrine habits are predictable. Mercer almost laughed despite the tension. She was right, though. People were creatures of routine. They waited. Wind still gusting, still wrong. Then, At 0631, the wind began to drop. The sustained roar diminished. Snow that had been flying horizontally started to fall more vertically. The lull was coming. Iris's breathing slowed further. 4-second cycles now. Heart rate dropping, fingers sliding onto the trigger. The latrine door opened. Target emerged, adjusting his jacket, turning back toward the main building. Wind dropping further, 15 miles per hour. 10. 5. Lull. Iris exhaled halfway. Held it. Squeezed. The rifle cracked. Sharp sound swallowed immediately by the valley. Recoil pushed against her shoulder. She rode it, staying in position, watching through the scope. Time stretched. 1 second. 2. 3. At 1,800 meters, the bullet took nearly 3 seconds to arrive. Through the spotting scope, Mercer saw the impact. The target dropped mid-step. No stumble. No delayed reaction. Just instant collapse. "Hit," Mercer said, voice barely above a whisper. "Center mass. Target down." Chen stared through his binoculars. "No way. That's over a mile." Marsh just looked at Iris like she was something from another world. Iris cycled the bolt, ejected the brass casing, caught it in her gloved hand, pocketed it, chambered another round, kept the scope on target, waiting to see if anyone would respond, if guards would pour out, if secondary targets would appear. The compound remained still. No alarm, no reaction. The target lay motionless in the snow. Mercer keyed the radio. "Overwatch to base. Mission success. Target eliminated. Single shot, confirm kill." Pierce's voice came back, stunned. "Confirm, single shot?" "Affirmative. Clean hit at 1,800 meters." Long pause, then, "Copy. Hold position for 15 minutes, then extract." "Well done." Iris finally allowed herself to relax slightly, safed her rifle, began breaking down the bipod. Mercer turned to her. I don't even have words for that." She wrote, "It was adequate." "Adequate?" Chen laughed, slightly hysterical. "You just made an impossible shot look routine." "It wasn't impossible, just difficult." "Where the hell did you train?" Marsh asked. Iris paused, then wrote, "Somewhere that prepared me for this. Always vague, always guarded." They packed up quickly, erasing signs of their presence. 15 minutes later, they began the descent. The sun was fully up now, warming the valley slightly. Snow sparkled. Wind had returned to its chaotic pattern. If they'd waited even 30 minutes longer, the shot would have been impossible. Iris had known, had read the terrain, the weather, the timing, had known exactly when the window would open and had taken it without hesitation. During the hike back, Chen fell into step beside her. "Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "That shot. You didn't seem nervous, not even a little. Why?" Iris thought about it, then wrote, "Because I knew the variables. Wind speed, distance, bullet drop, temperature effects. Once you know the math, it's just execution." "But what if you'd miscalculated? What if the wind shifted at the last second?" "Then I wouldn't have taken the shot." "That simple?" "That simple." Chen shook his head. Most people would have felt pressure. Command watching, reputation on the line, first real mission. Iris wrote, "Pressure doesn't help accuracy." "So I don't feel it." She wrote it like it was obvious, like turning off fear was just a skill anyone could learn. Chen wasn't sure if that was impressive or terrifying. What? They reached forward base Rookfall at 8:30 hours. The entire unit was waiting. Pierce stood at the center, arms crossed. When Iris approached, he studied her for a long moment. "Report," he said. Mercer stepped forward. "Single shot, 1,800 meters, cold barrel. Wind conditions were marginal but stable. Vale made the call, took the shot during an optimal window. Target eliminated, no secondary contacts, clean extraction." Pierce looked at Iris. "You have anything to add?" She wrote, "Mission successful. No complications." "No complications," Pierce repeated slowly. "You just made a shot most trained snipers couldn't dream of, and you call it no complications." "It was within my capabilities." Pierce almost smiled. Almost. "Understood. Debrief at 1,000 hours. Dismissed." The soldiers dispersed, but the atmosphere had shifted. The whispers were different now. Less mockery, more uncertainty. Reynolds caught up to Iris as she headed toward the barracks. "Hey, that was a hell of a shot." She nodded acknowledgement. "Listen, about before, the jokes, the comments, that was out of line. You're clearly qualified." Iris wrote, "Accepted. No grudge. No lingering resentment. Just acceptance and moving on." Reynolds seemed relieved. "You need anything? Let me know." She nodded again, continued walking. In the barracks, Voss was cleaning his rifle. He looked up when she entered. "Heard you nailed it." Iris wrote, "Target eliminated. 1,800 meters. That's sniper legend territory. It's mathematics." Voss set down his cleaning rod. "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy. It's precise. There's a difference." She began stripping her own rifle, laying out parts with systematic care. Bolt carrier group, trigger assembly, barrel. Every component inspected, cleaned, reassembled. Voss watched the process. "You really do this every time? Full breakdown after every shot?" She nodded. "Why? You only fired once." Iris wrote, "One shot in combat conditions means the rifle was exposed to cold, humidity, stress. Every exposure requires inspection. Most guys just run a patch through the barrel and call it good. Most guys aren't responsible for mile-plus shots." "Fair point." Kate entered, face flushed with excitement. "Vale, everyone's talking about you. Pierce just told command you're cleared for advanced operations. They're pulling your records, trying to figure out where you came from." Iris's hand stopped moving for a fraction of a second, then resumed cleaning. She wrote, "My records are restricted for operational security. Yeah, but now they're pushing harder. They want to know what program produced you." "Doesn't matter." "Doesn't matter?" Cade sat down across from her. "You just proved you're one of the best snipers in the entire theater. People want to know your story." Iris set down the cleaning cloth, wrote carefully, "My story is classified. My performance speaks for itself. That's all that matters." "But don't you want credit? Recognition?" "No. Single word. Absolute." Cade looked confused. "Why not?" Iris paused, considering how much to reveal, then wrote, "Because recognition draws attention. Attention creates expectations. Expectations become pressure. Pressure degrades performance. I'd rather just do the work." She showed him the page, then immediately began erasing it with her thumb, a habit Mercer had noticed before. She never let her written words exist longer than necessary. Cade left, still confused but starting to understand. Iris finished cleaning her rifle, logged the maintenance in her book, and lay back on her bunk. Outside, she could hear the soldiers talking, speculating, building myths. She didn't care. Myths were noise. The work was what mattered. The debrief happened in the operations room. Full unit attendance. Pierce at the front, satellite images on the monitor showing the target compound, the body still visible in the snow. "Confirmed kill," Pierce said. "Command is satisfied. Intelligence suggests this elimination will significantly disrupt enemy operations in the northern sector." He looked at Iris. "Vale, your performance exceeded expectations. Effective immediately, you're cleared for active combat operations. No more inventory duty." She wrote, "Understood." "Questions?" Chen raised his hand. "Sir, given Vale's capabilities, shouldn't we be utilizing her for more long-range interdiction? We've got targets that have been sitting on the board for months because nobody could make the shots." Pierce nodded slowly. "Command is already reviewing that possibility, but we don't have unlimited intelligence. Target acquisition takes time." "What about training?" Voss asked. "If Vale's willing, she could teach advanced techniques, improve the whole unit's capability." All eyes turned to Iris. She wrote, "I can provide technical guidance, but what I do requires specific training that can't be replicated quickly." "Meaning?" Pierce asked. "Meaning I can teach theory, wind reading, ballistic calculation, range estimation, but practical execution requires years of conditioning, muscle memory, mental discipline. You can't shortcut that." Mercer leaned forward. "What kind of conditioning?" Iris hesitated, then wrote, "The kind that starts in childhood, the kind that shapes you before you're old enough to question it." The room went quiet. "How old were you when you started?" Pierce asked. 7. "And you've been shooting since then, continuously?" "Yes." For what purpose? Iris's pen hovered over the paper. This was the question she'd been avoiding, the one that required revealing more than she wanted. She wrote slowly, to create precision instruments, individuals capable of eliminating high-value targets under extreme conditions, to fill a specific operational need. Pierce read it twice. You're saying you were trained from childhood to be a sniper, specifically, exclusively. Yes. What program does that? A classified one. Which government? Iris didn't write anything, just met his eyes. Pierce understood. She wasn't going to say more. All right, he said finally. Your past stays your business. But understand, you're part of this unit now. We trust each other. We cover each other. If there's anything about your background that could compromise this team, I need to know. Iris wrote, There isn't. My training makes me an asset, not a liability. Your training makes you a mystery, Pierce countered, and mysteries make people nervous. Then judge me on results, not origins. Pierce considered that. Fair enough. Dismissed. The soldiers filed out. Iris was the last to leave, pausing when Pierce called her back. Vale? She turned. That shot this morning. I've seen a lot of snipers in my career, good ones. Great ones, even. But that... He shook his head. That was something else, something beyond normal training. Iris wrote, It was the job you asked me to do. It was more than that. You didn't just execute a plan. You read conditions in real time, made calculations most people need computers for, and delivered under pressure most shooters can't handle. That's what I was built for. Pierce caught the phrasing. Built, not trained. Built. Iris realized her mistake. Wrote quickly, figure of speech. No, I don't think it is. Pierce stepped closer. Whatever program created you, whatever they did, it worked. Maybe too well, because now you're here, and I have to figure out how to integrate someone who operates on a completely different level than everyone else. I integrate fine. I follow orders. I complete missions. Isn't that enough? For now. Pierce paused. But eventually, people are going to want answers. Command, intelligence services, maybe media if this gets out. You can't stay anonymous forever. Iris wrote one final line. Watch me. Then she left. Over the next week, the dynamic at Forward Base Rookfall transformed completely. Iris was reassigned to active operations. Overwatch positions during patrols, long-range reconnaissance, counter-sniper duties. Every mission she touched succeeded. A patrol pinned down by enemy fire. Iris eliminated 3 hostiles from 900 meters, breaking the ambush. Intel on enemy movement? Iris spotted thermal signatures no one else detected, called accurate positions. Equipment malfunction in the field? Iris jury-rigged a solution using spare parts and electrical tape. The soldiers stopped seeing her as a curiosity and started seeing her as an advantage. But not everyone was comfortable with it. Reynolds approached Mercer one evening, voice low. She's good. Too good. It's starting to feel wrong. Wrong how? Mercer asked. Like she's not human, like watching a machine work. Reynolds shook his head. She doesn't make mistakes, doesn't get tired, doesn't react like normal people. Yesterday, Chen told a joke. Whole squad was laughing, and she just stared at him. No expression, nothing. Maybe she didn't think it was funny. Or maybe she doesn't process humor the way we do. Reynolds lowered his voice further. What if whatever program trained her, damaged her, took away the parts that make someone a person? Mercer wanted to argue, but he'd had similar thoughts. Watching Iris move through the world with mechanical precision, emotions stripped away, everything optimized for performance, it was impressive and unsettling in equal measure. She's still human, Mercer said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. Is she? No good answer to that. That night, Mercer found Iris on the range again. 0200 hours, freezing cold. Just standing there, reading wind. You ever sleep? He asked. She wrote, enough. How much is enough? 4 hours, sometimes less. That's not healthy. It's functional. Mercer sat down on an ammo crate. Can I ask you something personal? She nodded slowly. Do you ever feel things? Normal things? Happiness, frustration, fear? Iris stared at him for a long moment. then wrote, "I feel things, just not the way most people do." What's that mean? It means I was taught to compartmentalize. Emotions interfere with performance, so you learn to set them aside, not eliminate them, just store them for later. And later never comes? Sometimes it does. When I'm alone, when there's no mission, no pressure. What happens then? She wrote slowly. Everything I've been holding floods back, all at once. It's overwhelming, so I try to avoid it. Mercer felt something cold settle in his chest. That sounds awful. It's the price of precision. Is it worth it? Iris looked at him directly. Wrote, "Ask me when I've saved your life." She wasn't joking, wasn't being dramatic, just stating probability. Mercer changed the subject. You ever think about what comes after? When you're done being a sniper? No. Why not? Because I don't know what else I am. The honesty of it hit harder than Mercer expected. Here was someone who'd been shaped into a weapon so thoroughly that the concept of existing outside that role was incomprehensible. You could be anything, he said quietly. Iris wrote, could I? Or would I always be this, someone who sees the world in distances and wind speeds and kill zones? Mercer didn't have an answer. They sat in silence for a while, wind howling through the valley, snow beginning to fall again. Finally, Iris stood, wrote, "Thank you for asking. Most people don't." Ask what? If I'm still human. She walked back toward the barracks before he could respond. Mercer sat alone as the cold, wondering if he'd just been given a glimpse of something real beneath the precision, or if even that conversation had been calculated, controlled, compartmentalized. With Iris Vale, it was impossible to tell. And that, more than anything, was what made her dangerous. Not the shots she could make, but the fact that you never really knew what she was thinking, or feeling, or planning. She was a locked box with a scope mounted on top, and forward base Rookfall was just beginning to understand what that meant. The alarm tore through forward base Rookfall at 0347 hours. Sharp, mechanical screaming that yanked soldiers from sleep into adrenaline-soaked chaos. Iris was already awake, boots laced, rifle assembled. She'd heard the perimeter motion sensors trip 30 seconds before the alarm triggered. Small advantage, but it mattered. Pierce's voice crackled over the base-wide speaker system. All personnel combat stations. We have multiple hostile contacts approaching from the North Ridge. This is not a drill, full defensive posture. Now. The barracks erupted. Men stumbling into gear, grabbing weapons, voices overlapping in controlled panic. Iris moved through it like water around stones, silent, efficient, already heading for the door. Vale, wait up, Chen shouted, still pulling on his jacket. She didn't wait, just stepped into the frozen night, rifle slung across her back, moving toward the command building where Pierce would be coordinating. The base perimeter lit up with floodlights, guard towers manning heavy weapons, soldiers taking positions behind reinforced barriers. Radio chatter sharp and rapid. Iris reached the operations room as Pierce was receiving reports from the towers. North Tower, I've got thermal signatures. Count 12. No, 15 hostiles. Range approximately 800 meters and closing. West Tower confirms movement. Different group. At least 10 more. Pierce's jaw tightened. They're boxing us in. Classic encirclement pattern. He turned to Mercer. Get everyone on the walls, overlapping fields of fire. I want... He stopped when he saw Iris standing in the doorway. She held up her notebook. I can help. You're not infantry, Pierce said. You're long-range precision. In close defense, you're not talking about defense. Talking about breaking their attack before it develops. Pierce stared at her. What are you proposing? Iris wrote quickly. Put me on the North Ridge Overwatch. Elevated position. I can identify their command element and eliminate it. Without leadership, their coordination collapses. That position is exposed. No cover. You'd be a sitting target. I'll be invisible. How? Because they won't expect a solo operator to move toward them instead of defending. Mercer stepped forward. She's right. Unconventional positioning throws off their tactical assumptions, but she can't go alone. I'll spot for her, Mercer continued before Pierce could argue. Two-person team, fast insertion, precision strikes, extract before they adjust. Pierce looked between them. Outside, gunfire erupted, ranging shots, soldiers finding their marks at distance. He made the call. You've got 10 minutes. After that, I'm pulling everyone back to hardened defense. If you're still out there, you're on your own. Iris nodded, already moving. Vale, Pierce's voice stopped her. Don't make me regret this. She wrote one word, won't. Then she was gone. They moved through the perimeter access point on the east side, blind spot in the enemy approach vectors. Mercer carried the spotting scope and rangefinder. Iris had her rifle, minimal gear, nothing that would slow her down. The north ridge was a jagged knife edge of rock and ice, 200 meters above the base. Climbing it in daylight was dangerous. In darkness, under hostile fire, it bordered on suicidal. Iris climbed like she'd done it 1,000 times. Mercer struggled to keep up. You trained for mountain warfare? She glanced back, nodded once. Where? No answer. Just kept climbing. They reached the ridgeline in 7 minutes. Iris immediately dropped into a prone position behind a boulder cluster that provided concealment without blocking sightlines. Below, the base was a pool of light surrounded by darkness. Beyond that, thermal signatures moving through the trees, enemy forces advancing in coordinated elements. Mercer set up the spotting scope, began identifying targets. I've got what looks like a command group, 3 individuals hanging back from the main assault force. Range, 1,200 meters. Iris glassed them through her scope. 3 figures in winter camouflage, one holding what looked like a radio, another pointing and gesturing, directing the attack. She wrote in her notebook. Center figure is commanding, radio operator left, security right. Eliminate command, then radio, then security. 3 shots, 3 targets, under combat stress. Mercer's voice carried doubt. That's what I do. She settled into position, adjusted the bipod legs with minute precision, chambered around, began her breathing cycle. Below them, the base opened fire. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Tracers arced across the valley. The enemy assault pressed forward, using terrain for cover, advancing in bounds. Professional. Organized. Dangerous. Iris blocked it all out. The gunfire became white noise. The chaos narrowed to a tunnel. Her scope, the wind, the targets. Wind was tricky, gusting from the northwest at 20 miles per hour, but with unpredictable eddies from the valley thermals. Temperature had dropped another 5 degrees. Air density higher. Bullet would carry differently. She made the calculations instinctively. No computer, no kestrel device. Just years of conditioning that had turned physics into reflex. First target, command element center. The one directing everything. She watched his movement pattern. Predictable. Every 30 seconds, he'd step into the open to observe the assault, then duck back behind cover. Waiting for the pattern. There. Stepping out. Wind lull. Brief. Maybe 4 seconds. Iris exhaled halfway. Held it. Squeezed. The rifle cracked. Through the scope, she watched the round travel. Time slowed. The figure jerked backward, dropped instantly. Hit, Mercer confirmed. Center mass. No celebration, no pause. Iris cycled the bolt, smooth, mechanical, chambered the next round. Second target, radio operator. He'd moved after the first shot, diving for cover, but his radio antenna was still visible. Amateur mistake. She waited. Breathing controlled, heart rate steady. The radio operator shifted positions, trying to call for support. Exposed his upper body for a fraction of a second. Iris fired. The antenna snapped. The operator went down. 2 for 2, Mercer whispered, slightly awed. Third target, security element. This one was smart. Hadn't moved after the first 2 shots, stayed concealed, probably scanning for the shooter's position. But he made a mistake. He looked up toward the ridge. Brief glance, trying to identify where the shots came from. Moonlight caught his face. Iris saw it through the scope, adjusted for his position, fired. 3 seconds later, he collapsed. All targets down, Mercer said. Command element eliminated. Below, the assault faltered. Soldiers who'd been advancing in coordinated bounds suddenly lost cohesion. Without direction, they became individuals making independent decisions. Some retreated, some held position, some tried to advance but without support. The base defenders capitalized immediately, concentrated fire on isolated groups. The enemy attack fractured, then broke entirely. Within 90 seconds, hostile forces were in full retreat. Iris watched through her scope, tracking thermals, making sure no one tried to regroup. Then she heard it, a sound that made her blood freeze. Radio chatter. Enemy frequency. Someone had survived and was calling in coordinates for their position. "We need to move," Mercer said urgently. "They're calling artillery." Iris was already packing up, rifle into drag bag. Bipod collapsed. Moving before Mercer finished speaking, they descended the ridge faster than they'd climbed it, controlled slides on ice, dangerous jumps between rocks. No time for caution. Behind them, the first mortar round hit the ridgeline. Explosion shattered rock, sent shrapnel screaming through the air. Iris didn't flinch, just kept moving. Second round. Closer. The enemy was walking the fire toward them. Third round landed 15 meters away. The concussion wave knocked Mercer off his feet. He slid, caught himself on an outcrop, kept going. Iris reached down, grabbed his jacket, hauled him up with surprising strength for someone her size. They reached the base perimeter as the fourth round detonated where they'd been standing 30 seconds earlier. The access gate slammed shut behind them. Pierce was there, face grim. "Report." "Mission success," Mercer gasped, catching his breath. "Enemy command eliminated. Assault broke. They're retreating." Pierce looked at Iris. She was already checking her rifle, completely calm, despite nearly being obliterated by artillery. "How many shots?" he asked. She held up 3 fingers. 3 targets? Nodded. "From 1,200 meters, under combat conditions, while under fire." Another nod. Pierce just stared at her. Then he turned to the radio operator. "Confirm enemy withdrawal. I want eyes on all approach vectors." "Confirmed, sir. Thermal signatures retreating north and west. No contact for the last 2 minutes." The tension broke slightly. Not gone. Just decreased from critical to merely dangerous. Pierce addressed the base. "Stand down from full alert. Maintain defensive positions. Rotate watch. I want damage assessment and casualty reports in 15 minutes. Then he looked at Iris. "Command building. Now, Matu." The operations room felt smaller with Pierce's anger filling it. "You could have died," he said, voice tight. "That was reckless." Iris wrote, "It worked. Next time you might not be so lucky." It wasn't luck. "No?" Pierce's voice rose slightly. "Enemy artillery nearly vaporized you. If you'd been 5 seconds slower..." I calculated the timing. I knew we had enough window. "You calculated..." Pierce stopped, rubbed his face. "You're not a machine, Vale. You can't calculate every variable. Eventually something will go wrong." Iris wrote carefully, "Everything goes wrong eventually. The question is whether you're prepared when it does." Mercer stepped in. "Cap, she eliminated their command structure. Without that, the assault fell apart. We'd have been in a sustained firefight otherwise. Casualties would have been significant." "I know what she did," Pierce snapped. "I also know she took an insane risk doing it." "Calculated risk," Mercer corrected. "There's no such thing in combat. There's just lucky and dead." Iris wrote, "I'm not dead." "Not yet." The words hung in the air. Pierce finally exhaled, some of the anger draining. "You did good work tonight, exceptional work. But you need to understand, this unit operates as a team, not as individuals taking solo glory runs." Iris wrote, "I wasn't seeking glory. I was solving a tactical problem. By putting yourself in the kill zone. That's where problems get solved." Pierce wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was setting in. Adrenaline crash, the reality of how close they'd come to being overrun. "Dismissed," he said finally. "Get some rest. We'll debrief properly in the morning." Iris and Mercer left. In the corridor, Mercer turned to her. "You really calculated the artillery timing?" She wrote, "Approximate, based on standard mortar crew reload rates and probable shell trajectory." "That's insane." "Oh, that's training." "What kind of training teaches you to calculate your own near-death down to the second?" Iris paused, then wrote, "The kind that assumes you'll be in those situations regularly." Mercer shook his head. "I've worked with special forces. SEALs, Rangers, Delta. None of them operate like you. Because I'm not special forces." "Then what are you?" She looked at him directly. Wrote 3 words, something more specific. Then she walked away, leaving Mercer standing alone in the hallway, more questions than answers swirling in his head. Dawn came cold and pale. The base surveyed damage, minimal thanks to the quick enemy withdrawal. 2 soldiers with minor shrapnel wounds, some equipment damaged by mortar fire, but no fatalities. A miracle, really, or precision. The soldiers knew who was responsible. Word spread fast in small units. Vale eliminated 3 command targets from over 1,000 meters. Solo operation, under fire, perfect execution. The whispers changed tone entirely. Reynolds approached her at breakfast. "That was incredible last night. Seriously, you saved our asses." Iris nodded, kept eating. "Can I ask, how do you stay so calm? Everyone else was panicking, and you just executed." She wrote, "Panic wastes energy. Fear clouds judgment. I can't afford either. But don't you feel it? The fear?" "I feel it. I just don't let it control me." "How?" "Practice. Years of it." Chen joined them, coffee in hand. "Pierce is recommending you for commendation. Probably a medal." Iris shook her head quickly, wrote, "No medals, just doing my job." "You don't want recognition?" "Recognition draws attention. Attention creates expectations. I prefer to work quietly." Voss sat down across from her. "Too late for that. Command's already asking questions. They want to know how one sniper dismantled an entire assault." Iris's expression didn't change, but her hand tightened slightly on her pen. Voss noticed. "That a problem?" She wrote, "Scrutiny complicates things." "What things?" "Everything." Before anyone could push further, Mercer appeared. "Vale, you've got a visitor." Iris looked up, questioning. "Intel officer from Regional Command. Flew in this morning, wants to debrief you personally." Something shifted in Iris's posture, barely perceptible, but Mercer caught it. Tension, maybe concern. She stood, followed Mercer to a private briefing room. Inside sat a woman in her 40s, civilian clothes but military bearing, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Specialist Vale," she said. "I'm Sarah Hendricks, Defense Intelligence. Please, sit." Iris sat, notebook ready. Hendricks studied her for a long moment. "Your performance last night was remarkable. 3 precision eliminations under combat stress. Command element neutralized, assault broken." Iris wrote, "I did my job." "Your job?" Hendricks pulled out a folder. "Let's talk about that. Your service record is mostly redacted. Training history, classified. Previous assignments, restricted access. Medical files, sealed. Operational security. Or something else entirely." Hendricks leaned forward. "I've been in intelligence for 23 years. I know what classified programs look like. And your profile matches something very specific." Iris's face remained neutral, but her breathing slowed. Defensive reflex. Hendricks continued. "Project Longshot. Experimental marksmanship program. Started in the early 2000s. Recruited children with specific aptitude markers. Trained them from age 7 through adolescence. The goal was to create perfect snipers, individuals who could make impossible shots under any conditions." She watched Iris carefully. "The program was discontinued 12 years ago, officially. Too controversial. Ethical concerns about conditioning children for combat roles." Iris wrote, "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" Hendricks opened the folder, turned it toward Iris. Inside were photographs, training facilities, children on rifle ranges, clinical assessment documents, and one photo that made Iris's hand freeze. A girl, maybe 10 years old, lying prone on a shooting platform. Dark hair pulled back, eyes focused through a scope, small, precise, familiar. "That's you," Hendricks said quietly. "Isn't it?" Iris stared at the photograph. Younger version of herself. Before the voice injury. Before everything that came after. She didn't write anything, didn't confirm or deny. Just looked at her own ghost. Hendricks spoke gently now. "I'm not here to expose you, specialist, or to create problems. I'm here because your performance capabilities suggest you're one of the Longshot graduates. And if that's true, Command needs to understand what they're working with." Iris finally wrote, "What do you want?" "Honesty. About your training, your capabilities, your limitations, if you have any." "Why?" "Because you're an asset, a significant one. But assets need to be properly utilized and protected." Iris wrote slowly, I don't need protection. I need to be left alone to do my work. That's not how the military operates. It should be. Hendricks sat back. Help me understand something. Project Longshot produced 17 graduates before shutdown. Most were reassigned to standard units, their specialized training essentially wasted. A few disappeared into classified programs. One committed suicide. She paused. Where do you fit in that spectrum? Iris wrote, I fit nowhere. I just exist. And I shoot. That's not a life. It's the only one I know. The honesty of it seemed to affect Hendricks. She closed the folder, pushed it aside. All right, here's what I can offer. You continue operating as you have been. No special attention, no publicity, but in exchange, I need detailed reports on your capabilities. Range limitations, environmental factors, physiological tolerances. Data that helps command deploy you effectively. Iris considered it, then wrote, and if I refuse? Then command starts asking harder questions, opens investigations. Your redacted files get scrutinized by people less sympathetic than me. That's coercion. That's reality. Hendricks wasn't apologetic. You're too good to stay hidden, Vale. The question is whether you work with me to manage the exposure or whether it happens chaotically. Iris stared at her notebook, then wrote, I'll provide tactical data. Nothing personal, nothing about the program. Fair enough. Hendricks stood, offered her hand. Iris looked at it for a moment, then shook it, brief, firm. One more thing, Hendricks said at the door. The voice injury. That was part of the training, wasn't it? Iris's eyes hardened. Not an accident, Hendricks continued. Deliberate, to eliminate unnecessary communication, to make you more efficient. Iris wrote 3 words. Get out, now. Hendricks nodded, understanding she'd crossed a line. I'll be in touch. She left. Iris sat alone in the briefing room, staring at her hands. They weren't shaking, she wouldn't allow that, but tension coiled in her shoulders, her jaw. Someone knew. Not everything, but enough. The carefully maintained distance between her past and present had cracked, and cracks, she knew from ballistics, were where things fell apart. That afternoon, Pierce called a formation. Full unit, everyone accounted for. He stood in front of them, expression serious. Last night's attack was repelled successfully. Minimal casualties. Enemy forces scattered. That's due to coordinated defense and exceptional individual performance. He looked directly at Iris. Specialist Vale's actions directly resulted in the collapse of enemy assault. Command has taken notice. Effective immediately, she's being assigned advanced operational status with expanded tactical authority. Murmurs through the ranks. Some impressed, others uncertain. This means, Pierce continued, that Vale will have discretion to take independent action during combat scenarios when her assessment determines it's tactically sound. She'll coordinate with myself and Sergeant Mercer, but she's authorized to make real-time decisions. Reynolds raised his hand. Sir, isn't that unusual for a specialist? It is, Pierce admitted, but Vale's skill set is unusual. We'd be idiots not to leverage it properly. He addressed the whole unit. Some of you are uncomfortable with how she operates. I get that. She's different. But different doesn't mean wrong. It means we need to adjust our thinking. Pierce's tone sharpened. And for anyone still questioning her capabilities, last night she eliminated 3 targets from 1,200 meters in combat conditions while under artillery fire. That's not luck. That's not a fluke. That's skill we need to respect and utilize. The formation settled into acceptance. Not universal, some still carried doubt, but enough to maintain unit cohesion. Dismissed. As soldiers dispersed, Mercer approached Iris. That intel officer. What did she want? Iris wrote, information about my background. Did you give it to her? Some. Not everything. You worried? She paused, then wrote, always. But worry doesn't change anything. What does? Preparation, execution, results. Mercer studied her. You know, for someone who can't speak, you communicate pretty clearly. Iris almost smiled. Almost. Then wrote, words are overrated anyway. Bullets speak louder? She looked at him, nodded once. That night the base settled into nervous quiet. Increased patrols. heightened alert, everyone waiting for the next attack. Iris stood on the north wall, watching the valley. Wind cut through her jacket, but she didn't move, just observed. Mercer joined her after a while. Didn't speak, just stood beside her, watching the same darkness. Finally, he broke the silence. "Can I ask you something personal?" She nodded. "Do you ever regret it? The training? What they did to you?" Iris thought for a long time, then pulled out her notebook, wrote carefully, "Regret implies I had a choice. I didn't. They chose me when I was 7. By the time I understood what was happening, I was already this, already shaped." She showed him, then kept writing. "So I don't regret it. I just exist within it, make the best of what I am." "That's sad," Mercer said quietly. Iris erased the words, wrote new ones. "Maybe, but it's honest. And honesty is more than most people manage." They stood in silence for another minute. Then gunfire erupted from the eastern perimeter. "Contact!" a voice screamed over the radio. "Multiple hostiles! They're inside the wire!" Pierce's voice cut through the chaos. "All units, defensive positions. This is a breach situation." Iris and Mercer sprinted toward the sound. The base descended into controlled chaos. Soldiers moving to intercept, overlapping fire sectors. Someone screaming for a medic. When they reached the eastern sector, they found Reynolds and Chen pinned down behind a supply container. Enemy forces had infiltrated through a blind spot, were advancing with suppressing fire. Iris assessed instantly. 7 hostiles, using darkness and terrain effectively. Professional tactics. She dropped to one knee, raised her rifle, and then something strange happened. The hostiles stopped advancing, started retreating, fast. "They're pulling back," Chen shouted. "Why are they—" Flare ignited overhead. Brilliant white light flooded the compound, and in that light, Iris saw it. Explosives, planted on the main ammunition bunker. Timer running. They hadn't come to fight. They'd come to destroy the base. Iris ran, faster than she'd ever moved. The bunker was 50 meters away. The timer showed 23 seconds. Mercer saw where she was going. "Vale, no! Get back!" She ignored him, reached the bunker, examined the explosive device. Sophisticated, military grade, multiple redundancy triggers. 18 seconds. Her hands moved with surgical precision, tracing wires, identifying the primary trigger mechanism. 15 seconds. She pulled out her multi-tool, started cutting. "Vale, get out of there!" Pierce's voice over the radio. "That's an order!" She didn't stop, couldn't stop. 10 seconds. Cut the wrong wire, everything explodes. Cut the right wire, they live. No pressure. 7 seconds. She made her choice. Cut. 5 seconds. The timer stopped. Device neutralized. Iris stood slowly, legs slightly unsteady from adrenaline she wouldn't acknowledge. Behind her, the entire base had gone silent. Just staring. Mercer reached her first. You just defused a bomb. With 15 seconds left. She wrote, hand trembling slightly despite her control. 14 seconds. I had time. Time! Mercer's voice cracked. You had enough time to die. But I didn't. Pierce arrived, face pale. Vale, that was... She held up her hand, wrote quickly. Their assault was a feint. Real objective was destroying our ammunition. Without supplies, we can't sustain defense. They're coming back with a larger force. How do you know that? Because that's what I would do. Pierce looked at the defused bomb, then at Iris. How did you know how to disarm it? She wrote, part of my training. Demolitions, ordnance disposal. They taught us everything. Who's they? Iris didn't answer. Just turned, walked back toward the command building. Behind her, she heard Reynolds whisper to Chen. What the hell is she? Chen's response was quiet but clear. I don't know, but I'm damn glad she's on our side. That night, as the base fortified against the expected return assault, Iris sat in the armory, cleaning her rifle with mechanical precision. Her hands didn't shake anymore. The tremor from the bomb disposal had passed, but something inside her had shifted. For years, she'd maintained distance, stayed separate, operated as a tool, not a person. But tonight, she'd risked everything to save people she barely knew. That wasn't protocol. That wasn't training. That was something else entirely. Something that scared her more than any enemy ever could, because if she started caring whether people lived or died, she couldn't stay the weapon she'd been built to be, and she didn't know how to be anything else. Outside, the wind howled through forward base Rookfall, and inside, Iris Vale sat in the darkness, caught between what she was made to be and what she might become. The question was which would win. The rifle parts lay spread across the workbench like the components of a dissected machine: bolt carrier group, firing pin, trigger assembly. Each piece perfectly clean, perfectly maintained, perfectly controlled. Unlike the storm building inside Iris's chest, she tried to focus on reassembly, tried to let the familiar motions calm the unfamiliar turbulence. But her hands hesitated over the trigger housing, a microscopic pause that would have been invisible to anyone else. To her, it felt like failure. The door opened. Mercer. She'd heard his footsteps 30 seconds before he arrived. "Pierce wants to see you," he said. "Command building, now." Iris nodded, began packing up her equipment. "You okay?" Mercer asked. She looked at him, really looked, not just the tactical assessment she usually performed. He was exhausted. Everyone was. 3 attacks in 6 days. The base running on adrenaline and coffee and fear. She wrote, "Define okay." "Fair point." Mercer leaned against the door frame. "For what it's worth, what you did tonight, the bomb, that was beyond anything I've seen. It was necessary. It was insane. 15 seconds to disarm something that could have vaporized the whole base?" He shook his head. "Most EOD techs wouldn't even attempt it." "I'm not EOD." "No, you're something else entirely." He paused. "The question everyone's asking is what, exactly?" Iris finished reassembling her rifle, loaded it into the case, wrote without looking at him. "Does it matter? As long as I do my job?" "It matters to Pierce, and to the intel people breathing down his neck. They want answers about you. They won't get them." "Vale," Mercer's voice softened. "Whatever you're protecting, whatever secrets you're carrying, it might be safer to share them, at least with people who can help." She met his eyes, wrote carefully. "The secrets aren't mine to share. They belong to the program that made me. And that program is buried for a reason." "What reason?" "Because what they did to us was illegal, unethical. And if it came to light, a lot of powerful people would face consequences." Mercer absorbed that. "How many of you were there in the program?" 17. "And how many are still operational?" Iris paused, then wrote, "I don't know. We lost contact after shutdown. Some were reassigned, some disappeared. One..." She didn't finish, just drew a single horizontal line. Mercer understood. "You think you're the only one left?" "I think I'm the only one who's still what they made us to be." "Is that a good thing?" She stared at the question, then wrote, "Ask me when this is over." Pierce wasn't alone in the command building. Sarah Hendricks was there, along with 2 other intel officers Iris didn't recognize. The room felt smaller, more oppressive. "Sit," Pierce said. It wasn't a request. Iris sat, notebook ready, expression neutral. Hendricks spoke first. "Specialist Vale, we need full disclosure. Your performance over the past week has been exceptional and deeply concerning. You've demonstrated capabilities that suggest training far beyond standard military protocols." Iris wrote, "I completed my assigned mission successfully." "You've done more than that," one of the other officers said, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, according to his nameplate. "You've displayed expertise in long-range marksmanship, explosive ordnance disposal, tactical planning, and combat medicine. That's not one specialty. That's multiple advanced certifications compressed into a single operator. Comprehensive training. From a program that officially doesn't exist," Hendricks added, "we pulled every classified file we could access. Project Longshot was terminated 12 years ago. All participants were supposed to be reassigned or discharged, but you're still operating at full capacity." Iris didn't respond. Webb leaned forward. "Here's the problem, Specialist. You're an unknown variable in our operational theater. We don't know your limitations. We don't know your psychological stability. We don't know if you're a controlled asset or a potential risk." Iris's pen moved across the page. I've followed every order, completed every mission, saved lives, including yours tonight. What more do you need? Transparency, Pierce said quietly. We need to understand what we're working with. Iris looked at him, betrayal flickering in her eyes before she could suppress it. Pierce saw it. This isn't personal, Vale. It's operational reality. You've proven yourself invaluable, but command can't deploy an asset they don't fully understand. Especially one who can disarm military-grade explosives with seconds to spare, Webb added. That's not skill you pick up in standard training. That's something else. Iris wrote slowly. You want to know what they did to us? Yes, Hendricks said. Why? So you can replicate it? Start a new program? Create more weapons disguised as children? The room went silent. That's not our intention, Hendricks said carefully. Isn't it? Iris wrote faster now, anger bleeding through. You see results. You want to bottle them, package them, deploy them. That's how it always starts. We're trying to protect you, Webb insisted. By dissecting me? Cataloging my capabilities? Turning me into a case study? Pierce intervened. Vale, nobody's trying to hurt you. We just need to know what you're capable of, and what could go wrong. She stared at him, then wrote, Everything could go wrong. That's the point. They trained us to operate beyond normal human limitations, but humans aren't machines. Eventually, something breaks. What breaks? Mercer asked from the doorway. Nobody had noticed him enter. Iris turned, considered not answering, then wrote, The parts that make you human. Empathy, fear, self-preservation. They conditioned those responses out of us. Made us efficient, perfect, empty. She showed them the page, then kept writing. One of us couldn't handle it. The emptiness. She put a gun in her mouth at 17. Another went AWOL, disappeared completely. The rest learned to compartmentalize, lock away the parts that hurt, become what they needed us to be. And what did they need you to be? Hendricks asked gently. Iris wrote 2 words. Precision instruments. She held up the notebook, let them read it, then wrote more. Not soldiers, not operators, instruments, tools that could be pointed at a target and trusted to deliver exact results under any conditions. That's, Mercer struggled for words, that's not training, that's conditioning. It's both, and it's irreversible. Webb shifted uncomfortably. Specialist, you understand we can't just accept that and move on. There are protocols, psychological evaluations, oversight requirements. Iris slammed her notebook on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Everyone froze. She wrote in sharp, angry strokes, I don't need evaluation. I need to be left alone to do my job. That's the deal. You use what I can do. I stay operational. Nobody digs into what created me. That's not how the military works, Webb said. Then discharge me, right now. Give me papers and let me walk away. Pierce stood. Nobody's discharging you. Then stop treating me like a problem to solve. You are a problem, Webb said bluntly. You're a highly capable asset with an unknown backstory, unverified psychological stability, and capabilities that raise serious questions about oversight failures in classified programs. Iris looked at him coldly, wrote, I'm also the reason this base still has ammunition, and half its personnel are still breathing. She stood, gathered her notebook, wrote one final line, evaluate that. Then she walked out. Pierce called after her, Vale, we're not finished. The door closed. In the silence that followed, Mercer spoke quietly. You're pushing her wrong. Excuse me? Webb bristled. She's not a threat. She's traumatized. There's a difference. Traumatized operators are threats, Webb countered. PTSD, dissociation, emotional instability. She's the opposite of unstable, Mercer interrupted. She's too stable, too controlled. That's what you're seeing. Someone who's learned to function without the normal human responses that keep us grounded. Hendricks nodded slowly. He's right. Her psychological profile suggests hyper-compartmentalization. She's not broken. She's rigidly functional, almost compulsively so. Which makes her unpredictable, Webb argued. No, Pierce said quietly. It makes her reliable. That's what scares you. She's more consistent than any operator I've ever worked with. And consistency in someone with her capabilities is unsettling. He looked at the door Iris had exited through. But she's right about one thing. She saved more lives in 1 week than most soldiers do in a career. We need to respect that. Webb wasn't convinced. Captain, with respect, command needs documentation, capability assessments, risk analysis. Then get it from her performance, Pierce cut him off. Watch what she does. Measure results. But stop trying to dissect her like a lab specimen. She's a soldier, not a science project. She's both, Hendricks said softly. And that's what makes this complicated. Iris found herself on the north wall again. Same position, same wind, different internal landscape. The anger had faded. She'd compartmentalized it, locked it away with everything else. But something remained. A residue. Resentment. She'd saved them. Protected them. Risked everything for people who now wanted to pick apart her existence to understand how she functioned. Like she was something to be understood rather than someone to be trusted. Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. You know, Chen's voice said, most people would have told them to go to hell. Iris pulled out her notebook. I did. Politely. That was polite? Chen laughed. You slammed your notebook on the table hard enough to make a colonel flinch. Restraint. Chen leaned against the wall beside her. For what it's worth, I think they're idiots. You've proven yourself 10 times over. Proving yourself never ends. There's always another test. That sucks. Yes. They stood in companionable silence. Chen pulled out a cigarette, offered one to Iris. She shook her head. You ever smoke? He asked. No. Affects respiratory control, degrades lung capacity. Right. Because everything you do is optimized. He lit up, exhaled slowly. You ever just do something for no reason, just because you want to? Iris thought about it, then wrote, I don't know what I want. They never taught us that. They taught you to shoot, to survive, to complete missions, but not to want things? Wanting creates complications. Preferences create bias. Bias degrades performance. That's a horrible way to live. Iris looked at him, wrote, It's the only way I know. Chen took another drag. What would you do? If you could want something, if you could choose? The question hung in the cold air. Iris stared at her notebook for a long time, then wrote slowly. I think I'd want to be normal, to feel fear and excitement and joy without having to compartmentalize them, to have conversations without calculating optimal responses, to exist without constantly optimizing. She showed him, then added, But I can't. That option was removed when I was 7. That's not fair, Chen said quietly. No, but fairness isn't relevant. It should be. Should is a luxury I can't afford. Chen finished his cigarette, crushed it under his boot. You know what I think? I think you're more human than you believe. Because someone who was just a weapon wouldn't care about fairness at all. Iris didn't respond, just stared out at the valley, processing. Think about it, Chen said, heading back inside. See you at formation. Alone again, Iris pulled out her notebook, wrote a single question she'd never asked before. What am I beyond what they made me? She stared at the words, then erased them. The next morning brought new intelligence. Command had intercepted enemy communications suggesting a major assault planned within 48 hours. Full battalion strength, coordinated attack from multiple vectors. Pierce gathered the unit in the operations room. This is bigger than anything we've faced. We're looking at potentially 200 hostiles with heavy weapons support. Our defensive position is strong, but we're outnumbered 10-1. Reinforcements? Voss asked. 72 hours minimum. We need to hold until then. Reynolds raised his hand. What about evacuation? Pull back to a more defensible position? And abandon the base? Give them control of this valley? Pierce shook his head. Not acceptable. This position controls 3 major supply routes. If we lose it, the entire region becomes contested. Mercer studied the tactical map. We need to disrupt their staging area. Hit them before they're organized. With 16 people? Cade's voice cracked slightly. Against 200? Pierce looked at Iris. What do you think? Everyone turned. She'd been standing at the back, silent as always. She moved forward, studied the map. Terrain features, enemy probable positions, approach vectors. Then she wrote, We don't fight them head on, we make them fight on our terms. Explain, Pierce said. Their strength is numbers. Our strength is position and precision. We use that asymmetry. She pointed to the map, wrote more. They'll stage here. Valley entrance. Natural bottleneck. We position snipers on the ridgelines. Create kill zones at optimal ranges. Force them to advance through predetermined corridors where we have overlapping fields of fire. Mercer nodded. Classic defense in depth. Not enough. We need to break their cohesion before they reach us. How? Webb asked. He'd stayed at the base, ostensibly to observe. Iris wrote, eliminate their leadership, command structure, communications. I can identify high-value targets from distance, remove them systematically. Without coordination, they become a mob instead of an army. You're talking about assassination, Webb said. Multiple targets, under combat conditions. I'm talking about tactical elimination of force multipliers. Can you actually do that? Pierce asked. Identify and eliminate multiple command targets in a combat scenario? Iris looked at him. Wrote, yes. Single word. Absolute certainty. Pierce made his decision. All right, we go with Vale's plan. Mercer, work with her on positioning and target priorities. Everyone else, start fortifying defensive sectors. We've got 2 days to prepare. The room mobilized. Soldiers moving to their assignments. Purpose replacing fear. Webb pulled Pierce aside. Captain, you're putting enormous trust in an operator with questionable psychological parameters. I'm putting trust in results, Pierce said. She's earned that. And if she fails, if the pressure breaks her? Pierce looked through the window at Iris, who was already sketching firing positions on a tactical map. She won't. That's what scares me. She's incapable of breaking. They made sure of that. Is that reassuring or terrifying? Both, Pierce admitted. The next 2 days blurred together. Fortifications, range calculations, ammunition distribution. Iris worked with machine efficiency, moving between positions, optimizing fields of fire, identifying every possible advantage. Mercer spotted for her while she ranged reference points. Target area alpha, distance 1,400 meters, wind 3/4 value, left to right. Iris adjusted her scope, made notes, moved to the next position. You planning to sleep at all before the assault? Mercer asked. She wrote, sleep degrades preparedness. Sleep also prevents exhaustion-induced mistakes. I'll manage. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Iris had to think about it, then wrote, I don't remember. That's not healthy. Healthy is irrelevant. Functional is what matters. Mercer sat down on a rock outcrop. Vale, talk to me. Not about tactics or missions. About you. She looked at him questioning. The intel officer was right about one thing, Mercer continued. You're pushing yourself beyond normal limits. Eventually that catches up with you. Iris wrote, I've been pushing beyond limits since I was 7. I know my tolerances. Do you, or do you just know how to ignore the warning signs? She didn't answer. What happens when this is over? Mercer asked. When the assault is repelled and the base is secure and you don't have an immediate mission to focus on? I find the next mission. And after that, another mission. Forever? Iris stared at him, then wrote, What else is there for me? Anything you want. A life, choices, something beyond combat. I don't know how to want things. We covered this. Then learn, Mercer said. Start small. What's one thing you'd like to do if you weren't constantly optimizing for mission performance? Iris thought for a long time, then wrote hesitantly, I'd like to hear music, not analyze it for tactical purposes, just listen. Music, Mercer smiled slightly. That's good. That's human. Is it? Or is it just another calculation? Identifying something that might make me feel normal. Does it matter? If it makes you feel something good, isn't that enough? Iris wrote, I don't know what enough feels like. The honesty of it broke something in Mercer's chest. Here was someone so thoroughly conditioned that basic human experiences were foreign concepts. After this is over, he said, I'm going to play you some music, real stuff, blues, jazz, whatever. And you're going to just listen. No analysis, no optimization. Deal? Iris looked at him for a long moment, then wrote, Deal, small word, Enormous concession. The assault came at dawn, exactly as intelligence predicted. Iris watched through her scope from the northern ridgeline. Elevated position, maximum range advantage. Below, enemy forces gathered at the valley entrance. Hundreds of them, organized in battalion formation. She identified command elements immediately. Officers with radios, squad leaders gesturing orders. Communication specialists coordinating movement. Mercer sat up beside her with the spotting scope. I count 230 hostiles, multiple heavy weapons teams. This is going to be brutal. Iris wrote, "Not if we break them first." She settled into position. Breathing slowed, heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to wind, distance, targets. First target, battalion commander. Watching the assault from a command post, directing movement through radio. Range, 1,600 meters. Iris calculated. Wind, temperature, bullet drop. Made microscopic scope adjustments. Waited for the pattern. The commander would step into the open every 90 seconds to observe progress. There, emerging from cover. Iris fired. 3 seconds later, the commander dropped. Below, confusion rippled through the enemy ranks. Soldiers looking for the shooter, finding nothing. Second target, communications officer. Trying to establish contact with the fallen commander. Range, 1,400 meters. Another calculation. Another wait for optimal conditions. Fired. The communications officer collapsed mid-transmission. Now panic started. Officers shouting. Soldiers taking cover. The advance stalling. Third target. Heavy weapons team leader. Setting up a machine gun position. Range, 1,200 meters. Iris cycled the bolt. Chambered. Breathed. Fired. The heavy weapons team scattered. Mercer watched through the spotting scope, stunned. 3 for 3. They're losing cohesion. Iris kept working. Target after target. Every shot precise. Every impact devastating to enemy morale. By the time she'd fired 8 rounds, the assault had completely broken down. Soldiers retreating. Officers unable to restore order. The coordinated battalion reduced to fragmented groups running for cover. The base defenders opened fire. Clean, disciplined shots into the retreating forces. What should have been a sustained battle lasted 17 minutes. When the last enemy soldier disappeared into the tree line, the valley fell silent except for wind and distant echoes. Pierce's voice came over the radio. "Cease fire. Confirm enemy withdrawal." Observers checked sightlines. Valley clear. All hostiles retreated north. Casualties? Minimal. 2 wounded. Non-critical, 0 fatalities. Pierce paused, processing. Then, "Vale Mercer, return to base." Iris saved her rifle, began breaking down her position. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but something felt different, not wrong, just unfamiliar. Mercer noticed. "You okay?" She wrote, "I don't know." "What do you mean?" "I feel something. Something I've compartmentalized before, but it's pushing through." "What is it?" Iris stared at her notebook, then wrote, "I think it might be satisfaction. Not from completing the mission, from protecting people, She stopped. Couldn't finish. "People you care about?" Mercer offered gently. She nodded slowly. "That's called being human, Vale." "Is it? It feels like a vulnerability." "Maybe. But vulnerabilities aren't always weaknesses." Iris looked at him, confused. "Caring about people makes you fight harder to protect them," Mercer explained. "Makes you take risks, push limits. Your performance today wasn't just tactical excellence, it was personal. You didn't want us to die." Iris wrote, "I wasn't supposed to want anything." "Too bad. You're breaking programming." She almost smiled. Almost. They descended the ridge together, weapons secured, mission complete. Below, forward base Rookfall stood intact. Soldiers moving through post-combat procedures, medical checking the wounded, ammunition teams restocking, all alive because of calculations made from 1,700 meters away. When they reached the compound, the unit was waiting. Every soldier, standing at attention. As Iris walked past, they saluted. Not regulation, not ordered, just respect. Pure, unforced respect. Pierce stood at the center. "Specialist Vale, 8 confirmed kills, multiple high-value targets eliminated. Enemy assault completely disrupted. Mission success with 0 friendly fatalities. He paused. I've recommended you for the Distinguished Service Cross. Command concurs. Iris pulled out her notebook. No medals. Too late. You earned it. I was doing my job. You exceeded your job by several magnitudes. Pierce stepped forward, lowered his voice. You saved every life on this base. That deserves recognition. Iris wrote, recognition creates complications. It also creates respect, which you've earned. Pierce offered his hand. Thank you. She looked at his hand for a long moment, then shook it. Around them, the soldiers began to disperse, back to duties, back to normal routines. But the atmosphere had shifted permanently. Iris Vale wasn't the silent girl they'd mocked anymore. She was the reason they were still breathing, and that changed everything. That night, Mercer found Iris in the barracks, sitting on her bunk, staring at her rifle case. You keeping that deal? He asked. About the music? She looked up, nodded. Mercer pulled out his phone, connected to a small speaker. All right, no analyzing, no optimizing, just listen. He played something slow, jazz, piano, and saxophone weaving together in complicated harmony. Iris closed her eyes, let the sound wash over her, and for the first time in 18 years, she didn't compartmentalize what she felt. She just felt it. When the song ended, Mercer asked, "What did you think?" Iris wrote slowly, "It made me feel something I don't have words for." "That's okay. Not everything needs words." She looked at him, wrote, "Thank you for seeing me as more than a weapon." "You are more than a weapon," Mercer said. "You just needed permission to believe it." Iris didn't respond, just sat with the unfamiliar feeling of being understood. Outside, the wind still howled, but inside, something had shifted. Not fixed, not healed, just beginning. The music faded into silence. Just the hum of the barracks heater and the distant wind outside. Iris sat with her eyes still closed, processing something she couldn't name. Mercer watched her carefully. "You want to hear another one?" She opened her eyes, nodded. He scrolled through his phone, selected something different. Blues this time. Raw guitar and a voice that sounded like gravel and heartbreak. Iris listened, and this time something cracked. Not broke, just opened. A hairline fracture in 18 years of conditioning. When the song ended, she pulled out her notebook, wrote slowly. "I think I understand now." Understand what? Why they took my voice. It wasn't just efficiency, it was control. Mercer leaned forward, listening. Iris kept writing. If I could speak, I could question, could argue, could express things they didn't want expressed. Writing forces deliberation, makes everything measured, controlled. She showed him the page, then added, "They didn't damage my voice in training, they removed it deliberately. When I was 9. Jesus, Mercer breathed. That's monstrous. Yes, she wrote it without hesitation, but effective. I became quieter, more compliant, easier to shape. Did you ever try to get it back? Surgery? Therapy? The damage is permanent. Vocal cords scarred beyond repair. They made sure of that. Mercer wanted to say something comforting, found no words adequate. Iris wrote, "It's okay. I've adapted." But tonight, listening to music, I realized what I lost. Not just the ability to speak, the ability to scream, to laugh, to sing. She paused, pen trembling slightly, then, to be fully human. "You're still human," Mercer said firmly. "They took your voice. They didn't take your humanity." Didn't they? I don't feel things normally, don't process emotions like regular people, don't want or dream or hope the way you do. But you're learning. Tonight proved that. You felt something from music. That's human. Iris looked at her notebook, then wrote, "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just good at mimicking humanity while being fundamentally empty inside." You're not empty. You saved lives because you cared about them. Empty people don't do that. Or I saved them because that's what I was programmed to do. Protect assets. Complete missions. Function. Mercer stood, frustrated. "Stop. You're not a program. You're a person who was brutalized by a system that should never have existed. That's not your fault." Iris wrote, I know it's not my fault, but it's still my reality. Then change your reality. How? By choosing, right now. What do you want, Vale? Not what they trained you to want, not what missions require. What do you want? The question hung in the air like smoke. Iris stared at her notebook. Pen poised. Nothing came. Then slowly, she wrote 3 words. I don't know. Then that's where you start, Mercer said, figuring out what you want, who you are beyond the weapon they made you. Iris looked at him, really looked, with something vulnerable showing through the usual control. Then she wrote, Will you help me? Of course. She nodded once. Small acknowledgement, enormous trust. Morning brought Sarah Hendricks back to Forward Base Rookfall. She arrived via helicopter, accompanied by 2 additional officers and a civilian, psychologist, judging by the credentials on her badge. Pierce met them in the command building. Wasn't expecting command to send a delegation. After yesterday's performance, we needed to reassess, Hendricks said. Specialist Vale eliminated 8 high-value targets and broke a battalion-strength assault single-handedly. That's beyond exceptional. It's unprecedented. She did her job. She exceeded her job by magnitudes we need to understand. Hendricks gestured to the psychologist. This is Dr. Rachel Cormier, specialized in trauma response and cognitive conditioning. We'd like her to evaluate Specialist Vale. Pierce's expression hardened. Evaluate or dissect? Captain, because if you're here to turn her into a research subject, you can get back on that helicopter right now. Hendricks raised her hands. We're not here to harm her. We're here to help, to understand what she needs, what support we can provide. She needs to be left alone to do her work, Pierce said. That's the support she's asked for. Dr. Cormier spoke for the first time, calm voice, measured tone. Captain, I've reviewed the limited information available about Project Longshot. What was done to those children was unconscionable. They were conditioned through methods that would be classified as psychological torture by any modern standard. She paused. I'm not here to study Specialist Vale like a specimen. I'm here because people who've endured that level of conditioning often need specialized support, whether they realize it or not. Pierce considered that. I'll ask her, but if she says no, you respect it. Agreed. Iris was on the range when Pierce found her. Solo practice, firing at extreme distances, pushing her limits. Vale, Pierce called. Command's here. They want to talk. She lowered her rifle, turned, saw the helicopter, the delegation. Wrote, More questions about what I am? More or less, but this time there's a psychologist, says she wants to help, not interrogate. I don't need psychological help. Maybe not, but would it hurt to talk to her? See what she has to say? Iris stared at the command building. Every instinct screamed to refuse, maintain distance, protect herself. But something Mercer had said lingered. Change your reality. Maybe that started with being willing to talk about it. She wrote, Fine, but on my terms. What terms? Private conversation. No recordings, no observers, just her and me. Pierce nodded. I'll arrange it. They met in the small briefing room, just Iris and Dr. Cormier. The psychologist sat across the table, posture open, non-threatening. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, Cormier said. I know this is uncomfortable. Iris wrote, Why are you really here? Honestly, because I've studied the psychological profiles from Project Longshot. What was done to you and the others represents some of the most extreme conditioning ever documented, and I wanted to meet someone who survived it. Survived implies struggle. I simply exist. Existing through something like that is survival. Cormier leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you some questions? You don't have to answer anything you're not comfortable with. Iris nodded. When did you realize what they were doing to you wasn't normal? Iris thought for a long moment, then wrote, Around age 12. We had access to limited educational materials. I read about normal childhood development, realized mine was different. How did that make you feel? I don't remember. I was already conditioned to compartmentalize feelings by then. Did you ever try to resist, to refuse training? Once. When I was 10, I told them I didn't want to shoot anymore, that I was tired. What happened? Iris's hand hesitated over the paper. Then, isolation. 3 weeks in a soundproof room. No light, no human contact. Food delivered through a slot. When they released me, I was more compliant. Cormier's expression remained professional, but her eyes showed pain. That sensory deprivation torture used to break prisoners of war. It worked. And the voice injury? You told others it was a training accident. Iris wrote, "That's what they told me to say. Truth is, they damaged my vocal cords surgically, told me it was to optimize communication efficiency. I was 9, didn't understand what was happening until after. Did they ask your consent? Children can't consent. They just did things to us." Cormier took a slow breath. "Iris? May I call you Iris?" Nod. "What you experienced was abuse. Systematic, calculated abuse. Nothing about that was your fault." Iris wrote, "I know that intellectually, but knowing and feeling are different things. Do you ever feel angry about what was taken from you?" "Sometimes. Then I compartmentalize it. Anger doesn't serve a tactical purpose. What if it served a healing purpose?" Iris looked up, confused. "Anger at injustice is healthy," Cormier explained. "It validates your experience, acknowledges the harm, allows you to process it. Processing emotions wasn't part of my training." "I know, but you're not in training anymore. You're in the world. And in the world, processing emotions is how we heal." Iris wrote slowly, "I don't know if I can heal. The conditioning is too deep. I've tried to feel things normally, but it's like trying to run software on hardware that wasn't designed for it." "That's actually a good analogy," Cormier said, but hardware can be reprogrammed. Neural pathways can be rebuilt. It takes time, patience, support, but it's possible." "You're saying I can be fixed?" "I'm saying you can be whole. Not fixed. You're not broken. But you can integrate the parts of yourself that were fragmented by trauma." Iris stared at her notebook, then wrote, "Would I still be able to do my job? If I processed emotions normally, would I lose my capabilities?" "Honestly, I don't know. But I suspect your capabilities come from skill and training, not from emotional suppression. You might actually perform better with healthy emotional processing. Or I might hesitate at critical moments, second-guess myself, get people killed." That's the fear talking, the conditioning telling you that feeling makes you weak. Iris wrote, "Doesn't it?" "No, feeling makes you human, and humans are remarkably strong." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Iris wrote, "If I wanted to try, to learn how to process emotions normally, where would I start?" Cormier smiled gently. "Right where you are, acknowledging that you want to try. That's the hardest step." "What's next?" "Therapy. Regular sessions, working through the conditioning systematically, learning to recognize emotions as they arise, practicing expressing them in healthy ways." "How long does that take?" "Years, probably, maybe a lifetime. Healing isn't linear." Iris absorbed that, then wrote, "I don't know if I have years. My work is dangerous. I might not survive that long." "All the more reason to start now," Cormier said. "So however much time you have, you spend it becoming more yourself, not less." Iris looked at her hands, hands that had fired thousands of rounds, hands that had killed efficiently, precisely, hands that had never learned to create anything. She wrote, "I want to try. Then we'll work together, as long as you need." Over the next weeks, forward base rookfall settled into new rhythms. Enemy activity decreased. Word had spread about the impossible sniper who could eliminate targets from impossible ranges. Iris continued her duties, but something had shifted. She started attending group meals instead of eating alone, participated in card games with Chen and Voss, even though she didn't understand the appeal, sat through movie nights in the rec room, learning to experience stories without analyzing tactical accuracy. Small steps, incremental changes. But Mercer noticed. Everyone noticed. She was still precise, still exceptional, but less isolated, more present. One evening, Kate approached her hesitantly. "Vale, can I ask you something?" She nodded. Why do you do this? The shooting, the combat, all of it. You could probably get a medical discharge based on your history. Start over somewhere else. Iris pulled out her notebook. Wrote, "This is all I know, all I'm good at." That's not true. You're smart, disciplined, capable. You could do anything. Could I? Or would I always be the girl who was trained to kill from 7 years old? That doesn't just disappear because I get civilian clothes. Kay didn't have a response. Iris kept writing. But you're right that I have a choice now. For the first time, I could choose something different. I just don't know what. What do you want it to be? I don't know, but I'm starting to think I want to find out. Okay. The ceremony happened on a cold morning. Full unit formation. Command staff present via video link. Even Sarah Hendricks attended. Pierce stood at the front, medals case in hand. Specialist Iris Vale, for extraordinary heroism in combat operations, for precision marksmanship resulting in the elimination of critical enemy targets, for explosive ordnance disposal under extreme pressure, for tactical excellence that preserved the lives of every soldier at this base. He opened the case. It is my honor to present you with the Distinguished Service Cross. The base erupted in applause. Genuine, unforced. Iris stood at attention, expression neutral, but Mercer, standing beside her, saw moisture at the corner of her eyes. Not crying, just feeling. After the ceremony, soldiers approached her one by one. Reynolds shook her hand. I'm sorry for everything I said when you first arrived. You're one of the best soldiers I've ever served with. Chen hugged her, brief, awkward, but sincere. Thank you for keeping us alive. Voss just nodded, professional respect in his eyes. Honor serving with you. Each interaction was small, but together they formed something Iris had never experienced before. Acceptance. That night she found Pierce alone in the command building, reviewing supply manifests. Sir, she wrote in her notebook, then showed him. Can we talk? Pierce looked up, surprised. She'd never initiated a private conversation before. Of course. Sit. She sat, gathered her thoughts, then wrote carefully. I've been thinking about my future. What comes after this posting? And? I don't want to keep doing this forever. The shooting, the combat. I'm good at it. But it's not who I want to be. Pierce set down his tablet, gave her his full attention. What do you want to be? I don't know yet, but I want to find out. I want to learn who I am beyond what they made me. That's good, Vale, healthy. I'm requesting transfer, after my rotation here ends, to a training role, teaching marksmanship, passing on skills without the combat deployment. Pierce considered that. You'd be brilliant at it, but are you sure? You're one of the most effective combat operators I've ever seen. Effective isn't the same as fulfilled. I want to try being fulfilled. What changed? A month ago, you would never have said that. Iris wrote, a month ago, I thought I was a weapon. Now I think I might be a person. I want to explore what that means. Pierce smiled, genuinely smiled. I'll approve the transfer request. But Vale? She looked up. You were always a person. You just needed permission to believe it. She nodded. Small acknowledgement. Enormous shift. Ankit. 2 months later, orders came through. Transfer approved. Iris would rotate to Fort Benning, instructor role, Advanced Marksmanship Division. The base threw her a going-away gathering. Nothing official, just soldiers in the rec room sharing stories and bad coffee. Chen told the story of her first qualification, perfect scores that made everyone stop and stare. Voss recounted the 1,800-meter shot that broke the assault. Reynolds admitted he had been wrong about her, wrong about everything, and was better for learning that. Iris sat listening, notebook closed for once, just being present. When it was quiet, Mercer raised his coffee cup. To Iris Vale, the best sniper I've ever worked with, and more importantly, one of the strongest people I know. Everyone raised their cups. To Vale! She wrote quickly. Thank you, all of you, for seeing past what I was built to be, for helping me find what I might become. Later, after others had dispersed, Mercer walked her to the landing pad where a helicopter waited. You nervous? He asked. She wrote, terrified. Good. That means you're feeling something real. Is fear always this uncomfortable? Yeah, but it means you're alive. Iris nodded, then wrote, "Thank you for the music, for the conversations, for treating me like a person when I didn't know how to be one. You were always a person, Iris. You just needed to remember." She hesitated, then did something unprecedented. Hugged him. Brief, awkward, unpracticed, but genuine. Mercer hugged back. "Stay in touch. Let me know how the teaching goes." She nodded, climbed into the helicopter. As it lifted off, she looked down at Forward Base Rookfall, the compound where she'd been mocked, tested, broken open, and rebuilt. The place where she'd learned she was more than a weapon. The wind buffeted the helicopter. Same mountain wind she'd read 1,000 times for ballistic calculations. But now, instead of analyzing it, she just felt it. Cold, powerful, unpredictable, alive. 6 months later, Fort Benning. Iris stood on the range, watching a class of new snipers struggle with wind calculations. She didn't speak instructions, couldn't, but her notebook had become legendary. Students called her the Silent Professor. One recruit, frustrated after missing a shot, approached her. "Ma'am, how do you do it? How do you read conditions so perfectly?" Iris wrote, "Practice, patience, and understanding that perfection isn't the goal. Precision is. What's the difference? Perfection is impossible. It creates pressure, anxiety, failure. Precision is achievable. It's about knowing your limitations and working within them." The recruit read it, nodded thoughtfully. Another student raised her hand. "Ma'am, is it true you made an 1,800-meter shot in combat? First trigger pull?" Iris nodded. "How? What was going through your head?" She thought about it, then wrote, "Nothing. That was the problem. I was empty. Just calculating. Just executing." Isn't that good? No emotions to interfere? No. Because shooting without feeling is just mechanics. Shooting while caring about what you protect, that's purpose. And purpose makes you sharper. The students absorbed that. After class, Iris walked to the small office she'd been assigned. On the desk sat a photo, the soldiers from Forward Base Rookfall, crowded together, smiling. She picked it up, studied each face. These weren't assets, weren't tactical considerations. They were friends. That concept still felt foreign, but less so than before. Her phone buzzed. Text from Mercer. "How's the teaching life?" She typed carefully. "Different, good different. I'm learning as much as I'm teaching. That's growth. Proud of you. Thank you. For everything. Stay human, Iris." She smiled, small, genuine expression that still felt unfamiliar on her face. Typed back. "Trying. Every day." Dr. Cormier had been right. Healing wasn't linear. Some days Iris felt almost normal. Laughed at jokes, enjoyed meals, connected with students. Other days, the conditioning reasserted itself. Emotions locked away, responses calculated, the weapon underneath the person showing through. But even on those days, she recognized it now, saw the patterns, understood what was happening. And understanding was the first step toward change. One evening, alone in her quarters, she pulled out her personal notebook. Not the tactical one, but the locked journal she'd started keeping at Dr. Cormier's suggestion. Wrote, "Today, I felt proud. A student made a difficult shot and thanked me for teaching them. The feeling was uncomfortable but good, like sunlight on skin that's been in darkness too long." She paused, then added, "I think this is what healing feels like. Not erasing what was done to me, but building new things around it, creating a life that's bigger than the trauma." Closed the journal, sat in quiet reflection. Through the window, she could see the range. Empty now, waiting for tomorrow's training. She thought about the 7-year-old girl who'd first picked up a rifle, who'd been shaped and conditioned and broken down until nothing unnecessary remained. That girl still existed inside her, would always exist. But she wasn't just that girl anymore. She was also the woman who'd saved lives at Forward Base Rookfall, the instructor helping new soldiers find their own precision. The person learning, slowly and imperfectly, to be human. All of it. All at once. Complex. Contradictory. Real. And maybe that was okay. Maybe being human meant containing multitudes, The weapon and the woman, the training and the healing, the past and the future. Maybe she didn't have to choose. Maybe she could just be. Years passed. Iris continued teaching, continued therapy, continued the slow work of integration. She never regained her voice. The physical damage was permanent, but she found other ways to speak. Through her students, who carried her lessons into the field. Through her writing, which became less tactical and more personal. Through the small acts of connection she allowed herself, friendships, mentorship, occasional moments of joy. She would never be normal. The conditioning was too deep, the years of trauma too extensive. But she became something better than normal. She became whole. Not perfect, not fixed, just whole. And on the days when the old emptiness threatened to return, when the weapon tried to reassert itself over the woman, she remembered forward base Rookfall. Remembered the soldiers who'd seen her humanity when she couldn't see it herself. Remembered music playing in a cold barracks. Remembered choosing to try. And that was enough. Because in a world that had tried to make her into something inhuman, the simple act of choosing to be human was rebellion, was survival, was victory. Late one night, Iris sat on her quarter's small balcony, watching stars pierce the darkness. She pulled out her notebook, not to write tactical notes or teaching plans, just to write. Dear 7-year-old Iris, I wish I could tell you it gets easier, that the training stops, that someone rescues you, but that would be a lie. So instead, I'll tell you the truth. You survive. You become something they never intended, not just a weapon, but a person who chooses what to do with that weapon. You save lives. You teach others. You learn, slowly and painfully, to feel things again. It's not the life you would have chosen, if given the choice, at 7. But it's the life you build from the wreckage they left behind. And that makes it yours. Stay strong, stay precise, stay human. You're more than they made you. You always were. Iris. She closed the notebook, looked up at the stars, and felt, for perhaps the first time in her life, something approaching peace. The wind whispered through the trees, complex, unpredictable, impossible to fully control. Just like her. Just like life. And that was exactly right. Because in a world that doubts you, proof is louder than words. But choosing to be more than what others made you, that's the loudest statement of all.